Stop!
Chapter 1.
Seize him,
The
quickly!
Storm and the Wolf. The storm came without warning. Alara Kane had learned to read the
I
sky
said
long
stop!
before she'd learned
Seize
to read
him,
people.
quickly!
But tonight, the clouds had lied. One moment, the forest trail glowed amber beneath the setting sun. The next, the world turned violet and furious, rain slashing sideways through the pines like accusations she couldn't outrun. She shouldn't have been out here at all. Not this far from town, not this close to dark. But the cabin her aunt left her sat another 2 miles north, and Alara had spent the last 3 months learning that solitude beat sympathy. Back in Seattle, everyone had looked at her like she was breakable. Poor Alara, they'd whispered, after what Marcus did to her. After the wedding that never happened. After she'd found him with her best friend in the coat room, his hands in Charlotte's hair, their laughter sharp as broken glass. So she'd run. Traded her corporate apartment for an inheritance she'd never wanted, a rotting cabin in the mountains of Washington, where the trees grew so thick that cell service was a fairy tale, and the nearest neighbor was a town called Blackwater Ridge, population maybe 300 if you counted the dogs. The rain turned to ice against her cheeks. Alara stumbled over a root she couldn't see, her hiking boots skidding in fresh mud. Her flashlight beam jerked wildly, catching nothing but sheets of water and the skeletal fingers of branches overhead. Stupid, she thought. So stupid. Then she heard it. A sound that didn't belong to the storm. Low and broken, almost like a whimper but deeper. Rawer. It came from somewhere off the trail, past a thicket of brambles that looked black in the failing light. Alara froze. Every logical part of her brain screamed to keep moving, to get to shelter, to not investigate strange noises in the woods like some doomed horror movie protagonist. But there was something in that sound. Something that recognized pain because she'd made sounds. Like that herself. Muffled into pillows at 3 a.m. when the weight of humiliation finally cracked her open. She pushed through the brambles, thorns catching on her rain jacket. Her flashlight swept left, then right, and there. At first, she thought it was a dog. A massive one, dark fur matted with rain and something else. Blood, she realized, her stomach dropping. It lay on its side beneath a fallen pine, one leg twisted at an angle that made her wince. The animal's breathing came in shallow pants, steam rising from its muzzle. But as Alara crept closer, her light illuminating its face, she understood with a cold shock that this was no dog. The wolf's eyes met hers. They were amber, luminous even in the dark, and far too intelligent. It didn't growl or bare its teeth. It just looked at her, and in that gaze, she saw something that felt impossible. Recognition, understanding, a plea. Jesus, she breathed. Her hands shook, but not from fear. Okay, I can help, I think. Don't move. The wolf made a sound that might have been a laugh if wolves could laugh. Because obviously it wasn't going anywhere. Alara dropped to her knees in the mud, ignoring the cold seeping through her jeans. The wolf was enormous up close, easily twice the size of any wolf she'd seen in nature documentaries. Its injured leg was trapped beneath the fallen tree, and blood darkened the fur around a deep gash in its shoulder. She had no idea what she was doing. Alara had never been an outdoorsy person. Marcus used to tease her about it. How she'd wear heels on camping trips and complain about mosquitoes. But something in her refused to walk away from a creature in pain, even one that could probably tear her throat out with minimal effort. I'm going to try to lift this, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. If you can pull free when I do, then do that, okay? The wolf's ears flicked forward. It watched her with those unsettling amber eyes, and Alara could have sworn it, nodded. She braced her hands against the fallen pine, bark rough and slick under her palms, and pushed. Her muscles screamed. The tree shifted maybe an inch, but it was enough. The wolf dragged itself forward with a strangled snarl, its injured leg scraping against the ground. The moment it was clear, Alara let go, gasping, and the tree thudded back into place. For a long moment they stared at each other. Rain hammered down around them, turning the forest floor into a river of leaves and mud. The wolf struggled to stand, managed 3 legs, and then collapsed again with a sound that broke something in Alara's chest. "My cabin," she heard herself say. "It's not far. If you can walk, if you trust me, I have a first aid kit. I can at least stop the bleeding." This was insane. This was absolutely, categorically insane. But the wolf looked at her like it understood every word, and when Alara stood, taking a tentative step back the way she'd come, the creature limped after her. They made an absurd pair, a heartbroken woman and a wounded wolf, struggling through a storm that felt like the world ending. Alara kept glancing back, expecting the animal to vanish into the trees or turn on her with sudden wild instinct, but it stayed close, its breathing labored, its massive body shivering despite the thick fur. By the time her cabin's porch light appeared through the trees, a dim yellow beacon in the chaos, Alara's legs felt like rubber, and her entire body ached from cold. She shoved the door open, and the wolf limped inside without hesitation, collapsing on the threadbare rug in front of the fireplace. Alara locked the door behind them, her hands trembling, and stared at what she'd just done. She'd brought a wolf into her home, a wolf that was looking at her like she'd just saved its life, like she'd just changed everything. Chapter 2. The Stranger at Dawn. Alara had spent 3 hours cleaning wounds on a creature that shouldn't exist in her living room. The wolf had remained eerily still as she worked, those amber eyes tracking her every movement. She'd used an entire bottle of hydrogen peroxide, half a first aid kit, and 2 of her good towels that were now stained rust red. The gash on its shoulder had required butterfly bandages. She didn't have the courage or stupidity to attempt stitches on a wild animal, and the leg seemed sprained rather than broken, though she'd wrapped it carefully anyway. "You're lucky," she'd murmured at one point, her fingers gentle against matted fur. "Or maybe I am. You could have killed me by now." The wolf had made a sound low in its throat, almost like disagreement. Now, as gray dawn light crept through the cabin windows, Alara sat curled in her aunt's ancient armchair, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, and a cold mug of tea forgotten in her hands. She'd meant to stay awake, to keep watch, but exhaustion had won sometime around 4 a.m. She woke to silence, the kind of silence that felt wrong. Alara's eyes snapped open, her heart lurching. The rug in front of the fireplace was empty except for her blood-stained towels and... Her breath caught. A man lay there instead. He was naked, which her brain registered with distant alarm, his body half turned away from her. Dark hair, almost black, fell across a face she couldn't fully see, but she could see the bandages. Her bandages, wrapped around a muscular shoulder and a powerful leg, exactly where the wolf's injuries had been. "No," Alara whispered. "No, no, that's not..." The man stirred. A low groan escaped him, and he shifted, muscles rippling beneath skin that was tan even in the pale morning light. When he turned his head, she saw his face fully for the first time. He was beautiful in a way that felt dangerous. Sharp jawline, high cheekbones, a mouth that even in pain held a sensual curve. But it was his eyes that paralyzed her. Amber eyes, the exact shade she'd stared into last night, now set in a human face that radiated both exhaustion and something else. Something primal. Those eyes locked onto hers. "You're real," he said, his voice rough as gravel. "I thought maybe... fever dream." Alara couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Her mind spun through impossible explanations, each one more insane than the last. Hallucination. Stress-induced psychotic break. the universe punishing her for every bad decision she'd ever made. "What are you?" The words came out barely audible. The man, the wolf, tried to push himself up and failed, his injured leg buckling. He collapsed back with a curse that sounded more frustrated than pained. "Something you shouldn't have saved. That's not an answer." "No." His gaze held hers, and there was something ancient in it, something that made her feel like a child. "But it's the truth." Alara's fingers tightened around the blanket. Part of her wanted to run, to grab her keys and drive until this cabin was a memory. But another part, the part that had stopped for a wounded animal in a storm, the part that had spent 3 months hiding from a world that pitied her, that part was tired of running. "You're a werewolf." She said it flat, clinical, like she was diagnosing a cold. "Shifter," he corrected quietly. "The fairy tale version has too many inaccuracies." A laugh bubbled up in her throat, edged with hysteria. "Oh, well, as long as we're being accurate about the impossible thing happening in my living room." "Alara." She froze. "How do you know my name?" Something flickered across his face. Guilt, maybe, or resignation. "You're male." On the table. I could smell. He stopped, seemed to reconsider. "I saw it. Before I changed back." The word smell echoed in her head, but she pushed it aside. There were too many questions, and her exhausted brain could only handle them one at a time. She stood, keeping the chair between them like a shield, and grabbed the quilt from the couch. She tossed it to him. "Cover yourself, then start explaining, or I'm calling." She paused. "Actually, who do you call about werewolves? Animal control? The CDC?" "You can't tell anyone." His voice sharpened with urgency as he wrapped the quilt around his waist, wincing as the movement pulled at his injuries. "Please, you don't understand what—" "You're right, I don't understand anything." Alara heard her voice rising and forced it down. Panic wouldn't help. "So make me understand. Who are you? Why were you hurt? And why the hell did you let me bring you here if you're this?" He was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working like he was chewing through options. Finally, he said, "My name is Kale Thorne, and I let you help me because I would have died out there. But you can heal, can't you? I've seen movies. Not when we're poisoned." The word hung in the air like a threat. "There was wolfsbane rubbed into the trap that crushed my leg. It stops the healing. Keeps us vulnerable." "Trap." Alara's stomach turned. "Someone did this to you on purpose." "Yes." "Who?" Kale's expression shuddered, walls slamming down behind his eyes. "That's not your problem. You're in my cabin, bleeding on my rug, and apparently you're a mythical creature. I think I get to decide what my problem is." His mouth quirked, almost a smile. "You're not afraid." "I'm terrified," she shot back. "I'm just really good at compartmentalizing. Comes from years of corporate law and a spectacularly bad relationship. So talk. Who wants you dead?" Kale stared at her like he was seeing something unexpected, something that intrigued him. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer. "My brother," he said. "The alpha of Blackwater Ridge Pack. And if he finds out you helped me, he'll kill you too." Chapter 3: Secrets and Scars. The words hung between them like a death sentence. Alara's mind struggled to process what Kale had just said. Brother. Alpha. Kill you too. Each word felt sharp enough to draw blood. And suddenly, the storm outside last night seemed laughably safe compared to what she'd invited into her home. "Your brother," she repeated slowly, "is trying to murder you." "It's more complicated than that." Kale shifted against the wall, pulling the quilt tighter. Even injured and wrapped in her grandmother's faded patchwork, he radiated a kind of raw power that made the cabin feel smaller. "Damon isn't just my brother. He's the alpha, the leader of our pack." And I challenged him. Why? His jaw clenched. Because he's leading them wrong. Because people are dying. And he doesn't care as long as he maintains control. Kale's amber eyes burned with something that looked like old rage. Because he killed someone I loved, and called it justice. The pain in his voice was so raw that Alara found herself taking a step closer before she realized she'd moved. She caught herself, fingers gripping the back of the chair. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be smart. He looked up at her, and there was genuine fear in his expression now. Not for himself, she realized, but for her. If Damon's hunters find out I'm here, if they track my scent to your door, they won't ask questions. You're human. That makes you either prey or collateral damage. Then leave. The words came out harder than she intended. Heal up and go. I won't tell anyone. I'll burn the towels, bleach the floors, whatever you need. Just don't bring your war to my doorstep. She expected him to agree, to nod and promise to disappear as soon as he could walk. Instead, Kale's expression shifted into something complicated, guilt mixed with a stubbornness that reminded her uncomfortably of herself. I can't, he said quietly. The wolfsbane is still in my system. It'll take at least 3 days to purge, maybe more. Until then, He gestured at himself with bitter humor. Fragile. Human weak. And there are others in the pack who know I came this direction. They'll be searching. So I'm stuck with you. Alara heard the accusation in her own voice and didn't try to soften it. And I'm supposed to just... What? Hide a werewolf in my cabin and hope your homicidal brother doesn't come knocking? I wouldn't blame you for throwing me out right now. Kale's voice dropped to something almost gentle. You saved my life last night. That's more than anyone has done for me in a long time, but I won't ask you to risk yours. There it was again, that edge of loneliness she'd heard in his voice. It resonated with something deep in Alara's chest, some frequency that matched her own isolation. She thought about the last 3 months, about deliberately choosing this cabin in the middle of nowhere, about screening her mother's calls and deleting social media and pretending she could erase herself from a life that had imploded. Maybe that made her reckless. Or maybe it just made her tired of running. 3 days, she said finally. You stay out of sight. You don't bring trouble here. And you leave the second you can walk without falling over. Deal? Kyle stared at her like she'd just offered him something infinitely precious and infinitely dangerous. Why would you do this? Because someone should have helped you. Alara turned away, busying herself with the first aid kit to avoid his two seeing eyes. And because I know what it's like when everyone you should be able to trust betrays you instead. The silence that followed felt heavy with understanding. When she glanced back, Kyle was watching her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. What happened to you? He asked softly. None of your business. Fair. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. But you know all my secrets now. Seems unbalanced. Your secrets involve shape-shifting and attempted murder. Mine involve a cheating fiancé and a humiliating non-wedding. Alara pulled out clean bandages, keeping her tone light even as old wounds throbbed. Not exactly equivalent. Pain is pain. Kale's voice held no judgment, only a kind of weary wisdom. And betrayal is betrayal. Doesn't matter if it comes with claws. Something in Alara's chest cracked open at that. She'd spent months letting people minimize what had happened. At least you found out before the wedding, they'd said. At least you didn't waste more years on him. As if timing made betrayal hurt less. As if she should be grateful for the particular flavor of her heartbreak. His name was Marcus, she heard herself say. We were together 4 years. I found him with my best friend 2 days before the wedding, in the venue, during our final walkthrough. She laughed, but it sounded broken. The coordinator actually asked if we wanted to reschedule or just cancel the deposit. I'm sorry. Kale's voice was rough. Christ, that's cruel. Yeah, well, turns out people are good at that. Alara set the bandages down and finally met his eyes. So, maybe that's why I'm helping you. Because I'm tired of living in a world where everyone hurts everyone and we all just accept it. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. In the growing morning light, Alara could see details she'd missed before. The silver scar that traced his collarbone, the exhaustion carved into the lines around his eyes, the way he held himself like someone who'd forgotten what safety felt like. 3 days, Kale said finally, and it sounded like a promise. Then I'll go, and you'll never hear from me or my world again. Alara nodded, ignoring the strange flutter of disappointment in her stomach. 3 days. But as she moved to check his bandages, close enough now to feel the heat radiating from his skin, she wondered if 3 days would be enough time to regret this decision, or if it would only be long enough to make leaving impossible. Chapter 4. The Weight of Trust. By midday, Alara had learned that werewolves were terrible patients. Kale had managed to drag himself to the couch, wrapped in the quilt like some kind of brooding mythological figure, and had spent the last 2 hours insisting he was fine, while simultaneously wincing every time he moved. Alara had made soup, canned because her cooking skills were limited to things that came with instructions, and watched him devour 3 bowls with an appetite that seemed almost violent. "Do you always eat like you're afraid someone will steal your food?" she asked, perched on the arm of the chair across from him. He paused, spoon halfway to his mouth, and something sheepish crossed his face. Shifter metabolism. We burn through calories fast, especially when we're healing. And he set the bowl down. I haven't eaten in 2 days. Was trying to stay ahead of the hunters. 2 days. Alara shook her head. And then, you got caught in a trap and nearly died. That's some impressive survival instinct. Clearly not impressive enough. His mouth twisted bitterly. I should have known better. Damon's hunters are good at what they do. They've been tracking rogues and rebels for decades. Rebels. The word caught her attention. Is that what you are? Kale was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing the edge of the empty bowl. I used to be the heir. Second-born, but Damon's right hand. I believed in the pack, in our laws, in everything our father built before he died. His voice grew distant. Then I met Elena. The way he said the name, soft, aching, made Alara's chest tighten. She was human, Kale continued. Working at the diner in Blackwater Ridge. She'd moved from California, running from her own demons, I think. We weren't supposed to happen. Pack law forbids bonding with humans. Too risky, too complicated. But he smiled, and it was the saddest thing Alara had ever seen. She saw me. Not the wolf, not the alpha's brother. Just me. What happened? Alara asked, though she already knew the ending would hurt. Damon found out. Kale's hands clenched into fists. He said I was compromising the pack, that loving a human made me weak, vulnerable. He gave me a choice. End it and prove my loyalty, or leave the pack forever. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. I chose her, and 3 days later she was dead. The words fell like stones into still water. Alara felt them ripple through her, cold and devastating. He killed her? He says it was a rogue attack. A lone wolf from the territory disputes up north. Kale's amber eyes blazed with suppressed fury. But Elena died in her apartment, doors locked from the inside, and she smelled like pack when I found her. Our pack. I know what I scented. Jesus, Alara breathed. And no one believed you? Pack law is absolute. Damon is alpha, his word is law. Kale's jaw worked. I challenged him, demanded a formal inquiry, A trial by the council. He laughed in my face and declared me rogue. Said grief had driven me mad, that I was a danger to the pack. He looked down at his bandaged shoulder. His hunters have been after me for 6 months. This was the closest they've come. Alara sat with that for a long moment, processing. She thought about Marcus, about standing in their shared apartment while he packed his things, his excuses tumbling out like rehearsed lines. It just happened, Alara. You have to understand. We never meant for you to get hurt. As if intention erased impact. As if sorry fixed everything. I'm starting to think all men are monsters, she said finally. Shifter or not. Kale's laugh was startled and genuine. Fair assessment. So what's your plan? Alara stood, gathering the bowls. After you heal, where do you go? Keep running forever? There's a sanctuary, up in Alaska. He shifted, trying to find a comfortable position. Other rogues, pack exiles, shifters who don't fit into the territorial system. It's not much, but it's safe. Neutral ground. His expression darkened. If I can make it that far. That's a long way to travel when people are hunting you. Yeah. He met her eyes. Which is why I need to leave as soon as possible. Every hour I stay here puts you at risk. Ilara should have agreed, should have felt relieved. Instead, she found herself saying, You should rest more first, build your strength. If you go out there too weak, they'll just catch you again. Something shifted in Kale's expression, surprise, gratitude, and a wariness that spoke of too many betrayals. Why are you being so kind to me? You don't know me. For all you know, I'm lying about everything. Are you? She challenged. No. The word was firm, immediate. I don't lie, not anymore. Lies are what got Elena killed. Damon's lies, the pack's willingness to believe them. His gaze held hers with unsettling intensity. You deserve the truth, especially since you're risking everything to help me. Ilara felt heat creep up her neck. She busied herself at the sink, running water over the dishes. I'm not risking everything. I'm just not kicking out an injured person. That's basic decency. It's more than that. His voice was closer now, and she turned to find he'd managed to stand, leaning heavily on the back of the couch. Even hunched and wounded, he seemed to fill the space. You're lonely, like me, and you're angry at a world that hurt you. I can smell it on you. The hurt, the rage you keep buried under all that control. You can smell my emotions? Ilara's voice came out sharper than intended. That's invasive. I know. I'm sorry. But he didn't look away. But I also smell your strength. Your kindness. You're not broken, Ilara. No matter what he made you feel. You're just waiting. For what? Kale's amber eyes seemed to glow in the afternoon light. For someone to prove that trust isn't always fatal. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning neither of them was ready to name. Ilara's heart hammered against her ribs, and she couldn't tell if it was fear or something infinitely more dangerous. You should rest, she said finally, her voice barely steady. I'll keep watch. Kyle nodded, slowly, but his gaze lingered on her face like he was memorizing it. Thank you, he said quietly, for everything. As he settled back onto the couch, Ilara turned to the window and wondered what kind of trouble she'd really invited in, and why part of her was glad she did. Chapter 5. Shadows at the Door night came early in the mountains, and with it, a tension that made Ilara's skin prickle. She'd spent the afternoon trying to act normal, reading, organizing her aunt's cluttered shelves, pretending she couldn't feel Kale's eyes following her around the cabin. He'd dozed fitfully on the couch, his sleep restless, punctuated by low growls that made her wonder what he was dreaming about. Once, she'd heard him murmur Elena's name, the syllables broken with grief, and she'd had to look away from the naked pain on his face. Now, as darkness pressed against the windows and the first stars emerged, Kale was awake and alert in a way that set her nerves on edge. "Something's wrong?" she said, watching him stare at the door. "Maybe." His voice was tight. "The wind changed direction an hour ago. I can't. My senses are still dulled from the wolfsbane, but something feels off." Alara moved to the window, peering out into the darkness. The forest was a wall of black beyond the small circle of her porch light. "Should we turn off the lights? Lock the doors?" "Doors are already locked." "But yes, lights off." He pushed himself up from the couch with a grimace. "Do you have any weapons? A gun?" "I have a baseball bat under my bed and a can of bear spray by the door." She caught his expression. "What? I'm from Seattle. The most dangerous thing I usually face is aggressive parking." Despite the tension, Kale's mouth quirked. "Bear spray will work. Bring it here." Alara killed the lights and grabbed the canister, her hands steadier than she expected. Years of staying calm in hostile corporate negotiations had apparently prepared her for harboring fugitive werewolves. Who knew? In the darkness, Kale's eyes caught the moonlight filtering through the window, reflecting like an animal's. It should have terrified her. Instead, it made her feel strangely safe, like having a guard dog. Except the dog was a 6-foot-tall man who could apparently smell danger on the wind. "There," he whispered suddenly. "Did you hear that?" Alara strained her ears. At first, nothing. Then, a branch snapping. Too heavy to be a deer, too deliberate to be the wind. "How many?" she breathed. "2, maybe 3. They're trying to be quiet, but they're not used to hunting in human form." His jaw clenched. "Damon must have sent his best. They know I'm injured. They're trying to flush me out." "What do we do?" Kyle looked at her, and in the moonlight, his expression was tormented. "I need you to hide. There's a crawl space under the cabin, isn't there? I can smell the must, the old wood." "I'm not hiding while you fight them alone. You can barely stand." "Exactly." His hand shot out, gripping her arm with surprising gentleness. "Ilara, listen to me. If they take me, fine. I knew the risks. But if they find you helping me, if they even suspect you know what we are." His voice cracked. "I can't have another death on my conscience. Please." The raw desperation in his voice nearly broke her resolve. But before she could answer, the front door rattled. Someone testing the lock. "Cale Thorne." The voice that came from outside was smooth, almost friendly. "We know you're in there. We can smell you. The wolfsbane may be masking your scent, but not enough. Come out, and we'll make it quick." Cale's whole body went rigid. He mouthed a name to Alara. "Marcus." She nearly laughed at the bitter irony. Of course the hunter was named Marcus. "And if there's anyone else in there," the voice continued, "you should know that harboring a rogue is a death sentence. The Alpha doesn't forgive traitors. Come out now, and maybe, he'll show mercy." Alara felt Cale trembling beside her, and she realized with a shock that he was preparing to surrender, to walk out that door and let them kill him, just to keep her safe. Something fierce and reckless surged through her chest. "No," she whispered. "Alara." "I said no." She turned to face him in the darkness, her face inches from his. "I didn't save you just so you could throw your life away. We're finding another way out." "There is no other way." "The window in my bedroom. It faces the back of the cabin." Her mind raced. "How far can you run?" "Not far. Maybe a quarter mile before my leg gives out." "Then we make that quarter mile count." She grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the bedroom. "There's an old logging road about half a mile east. If we can reach my car—" The front door exploded inward with a crash that made them both freeze. 2 men stood silhouetted in the doorway, and even in the darkness, Alara could see they were massive, easily as tall as Cale, with shoulders that seemed too broad to be entirely human. Their eyes reflected gold in the moonlight. "Found you?" the one in front said. "Marcus," she presumed. He smiled, and there was nothing human in it. "And you brought a pet. How sweet." "She's not involved," Cale said, his voice steady despite his injuries. He stepped in front of Alara, putting himself between her and the hunters. "She's just a woman who lives here. I broke in, threatened her. She doesn't know anything." Marcus tilted his head, sniffing the air. "Liar. I can smell her all over you. Your bandages? That's her scent. Hydrogen peroxide, human sweat, and—" He grinned wider. "Fear. But not of you. Interesting. Leave her alone, Marcus. Your quarrel is with me. Our quarrel is with anyone who helps you." The second hunter spoke now, his voice harder. "Alpha's orders. No witnesses. No loose ends." Alara's hand tightened on the bear spray canister. She thought about Marcus. Her Marcus. The one who'd shattered her faith in people. She thought about how she'd let him make her small, make her doubt herself, make her run to this cabin to hide from the world. She was done hiding. "Get down," she whispered to Cale. "What?" Alara raised the bear spray and fired. The spray caught Marcus full in the face. He howled, an inhuman sound that confirmed every impossible thing she'd learned in the last 24 hours, and stumbled backward, clawing at his eyes. The second hunter lunged forward, but Cale, despite his injuries, met him halfway. The impact shook the cabin. They crashed into her bookshelf, wood splintering, and Alara saw Cale's face contort with pain as his injured leg buckled. But he held on, his hands wrapped around the hunter's throat, his teeth bared in a snarl that looked more wolf than man. "Run!" Cale shouted at her. "Alara, run!" Chapter 6. Blood and Moonlight. Alara didn't run. Instead, she grabbed the baseball bat from under her bed and swung it with every ounce of fury she'd been storing for the last 3 months. The impact against the second hunter's shoulder sent vibrations up her arms, and the man, the wolf, roared and released Kyle, whirling toward her with eyes that had gone completely gold. "Bad idea, human," he snarled. "Yeah, well, I'm full of those lately." Alara raised the bat again, her heart hammering so hard she could taste it. But before the hunter could lunge, Cale was on him again, moving with a speed that shouldn't have been possible for someone so injured. They went down in a tangle of limbs and violence, crashing through her coffee table. The sounds they made weren't human. Growls and snarls that raised every primitive instinct in Alara's body screaming at her to flee. Marcus had recovered from the bear spray, his face red and streaming tears, but his eyes blazed with murderous intent. He started toward her with deliberate slowness, savoring her fear. "You made a mistake helping him," Marcus said, his voice distorted by the beginning of a shift. His bones cracked audibly, his jaw elongating. "But don't worry, I'll make it quick. More mercy than you deserve." Alara backed toward the bedroom, bat raised, mind racing for options. The window. She just needed to reach the window. But Marcus moved faster than seemed possible, closing the distance in 2 strides. His hand, no longer entirely human, claws sprouting from fingertips, reached for her throat. A silver blur crashed into Marcus from the side. For a moment, Alara couldn't process what she was seeing. Then she understood. Cale had shifted. Not fully. His form was caught between man and wolf, a nightmare creature of fur and muscle and rage. He was smaller than his full wolf form, but infinitely more terrifying, his human intelligence glinting in those amber eyes, even as his elongated jaws clamped onto Marcus's shoulder. Blood sprayed. Marcus screamed. The second hunter, seeing his partner in danger, abandoned his attack and lunged at Cale's exposed back. Alara didn't think. She just moved, swinging the bat with everything she had. It connected with the hunter's skull with a sickening crack, and he dropped like a stone. The cabin went silent except for heavy breathing. Cale released Marcus, who scrambled backward, clutching his mangled shoulder. Blood poured between his fingers, dark and viscous in the moonlight. His eyes, still more wolf than human, fixed on Alara with pure hatred. "You'll die for this," he gasped. "Both of you. The Alpha will hunt you to the ends of the earth." "Tell Damon," Cale's voice came out distorted, caught between forms, "that if he wants me, he can come himself. I'm done running from his dogs." Marcus snarled something that might have been a curse, then dragged his unconscious companion out the door. They disappeared into the forest, leaving a trail of blood behind them. The moment they were gone, Cale collapsed. "No, no, no." Alara dropped the bat and fell to her knees beside him. His partial shift was receding, fur melting back into skin, bones reshaping with sounds that made her stomach turn. When it was over, he was human again, gasping for breath, his bandages torn and bleeding. "You didn't run," he managed, his voice raw. "Neither did you." Her hands shook as she assessed his injuries. The shoulder wound had reopened and new cuts marked his chest and arms. "You're an idiot. You could barely stand, and you shifted anyway." "You hit him with a bat." Kyle's laugh turned into a cough. "A baseball bat against a werewolf." "I had to do something. He was going to kill you." Alara's voice cracked despite her best efforts. "And after everything you said about not wanting another death on your conscience, you think I could just watch you die?" Their eyes met, and something passed between them. A recognition of matched recklessness, of two people who'd been broken by betrayal and were now stubbornly refusing to let the world break them again. "We need to leave," Kyle said. "They'll come back with more. Damon will know where I am now." "Can you walk?" "I'll have to." He gripped her arm, using her to pull himself up. His weight against her was solid and warm, and Alara tried to ignore how aware she was of every point of contact between them. "Your car. Do you have the keys?" "Always in my pocket. Old habit." She helped him toward the door, scanning the darkness beyond. "The logging road is about half a mile through the woods. Think you can make it?" "With you?" "Yes." The certainty in his voice made her chest tighten. They stumbled into the night, leaving behind the wreckage of her cabin, the broken door, shattered furniture, blood on the floors. Alara felt a pang of loss for her sanctuary, the place she'd hidden to heal. But as Cale leaned on her, his breathing labored but steady, she realized she'd been wrong about what she needed. She didn't need to hide. She needed something worth fighting for. The forest was treacherous in the darkness, roots and rocks catching at their feet. Cale moved, with grim determination, but she could feel him weakening, his body trembling with effort. Halfway to the road, he stumbled, going down on one knee. "Leave me," he gasped. "Take the car and go. Drive to the next state and don't look back. Stop it." Alara crouched in front of him, framing his face with her hands. In the moonlight, his eyes were fever-bright and desperate. "I'm not leaving you. I don't care if your brother is the alpha of all werewolves. I don't care if there's a whole pack hunting us. I'm not leaving you to die alone." "Why?" The word came out broken. "Why would you risk everything for me?" "Because you see me," she thought. "Because you're the first person in months who's treated me like I'm strong instead of fragile. Because when I look at you, I don't feel alone anymore." But what she said was, "Because someone should." Kyle stared at her for a long moment, and then, impossibly, he smiled. "You're insane." "Yeah, well, you're a werewolf. I think we're even." She pulled him to his feet, and together they continued toward the road, toward her car, toward an uncertain future that felt infinitely more alive than the safe, lonely past she was leaving behind. Behind them, in the distance, A howl split the night. The hunt had begun. Chapter 7. The Road to Nowhere. Alara's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles had gone white. They'd been driving for 2 hours, headlights cutting through the darkness on roads that grew progressively narrower and more isolated. Cale sat in the passenger seat, his head tilted back, eyes closed, but she knew he wasn't sleeping. Every few minutes his nostrils would flare, testing the air even through the closed windows, and his body would tense like he was preparing for an attack that could come from any direction. "How far back are they?" she asked, breaking the silence that had stretched between them since they'd left the logging road. "Can't tell anymore. The wolfsbane is still clouding everything." His voice was strained. "But they're coming. Damon won't stop. Not now that you've seen what we are." "So what's the plan? Drive until we hit Canada?" "Alaska. The sanctuary I mentioned." He finally opened his eyes, turning to look at her. "It's about 1,500 miles from here. We'd need to avoid major highways, stick to back roads, with stops to rest and eat." He calculated silently. 4 days, maybe 5. 4 days with a pack of werewolves hunting us. Alara let out a shaky laugh. "And I thought my last road trip was bad. At least that one only involved bad gas station coffee and Marcus complaining about my music choices." She felt Cale's gaze sharpen. "Your ex, Marcus." "Yeah." The name still tasted bitter. "Funny coincidence, right? 2 different monsters, same name. Tell me about him." When she glanced over surprised, Cale added, "We've got hours to kill, and I want to know what kind of man makes a woman like you think she's not worth fighting for." "Who says I think that?" "You ran. You hid in a cabin in the woods for 3 months. That's not someone who believes she deserves better." His tone held no judgment, only understanding. "That's someone trying to disappear." Alara was quiet for a long moment, watching the road unspool before them. Finally, she said, "We met in law school. He was charming, ambitious, exactly what I thought I wanted. We built a life together. The apartment, the career plans, the perfect Instagram-ready relationship." Her laugh was hollow. "Turns out it was all performance. He was sleeping with Charlotte for over a year. Everyone knew except me." "Everyone?" "Our friend group, his colleagues, probably the damn barista at our coffee shop." The old humiliation burned fresh. "I was the last to know. The joke. And when I confronted him, you know what he said?" She swallowed hard. "You were never really present, Alara. Always working, always tired. Charlotte makes me feel alive." "He blamed you." Cale's voice had gone cold. "For his betrayal. He made it sound so reasonable, like I'd driven him to it by not being enough." Alara blinked back sudden tears. "And the worst part? I believed him. I spent months thinking if I'd just been more attentive, more spontaneous, more something, he wouldn't have needed to find it somewhere else. That's not how love works." Kyle shifted in his seat, wincing as the movement pulled at his injuries. "Real love doesn't keep score. It doesn't punish you for being human, for having flaws." Elena used to say. His voice softened. She said love should feel like coming home, safe, accepted, not like a performance review where you're always falling short. She sounds like she was amazing. She was. Pain flickered across his face. She was also terrified when she first learned what I was. I shifted in front of her accidentally, lost control during a full moon. She ran from me, wouldn't answer my calls for a week. I thought I'd lost her. What, changed? She came back? A small smile touched his lips. Showed up at my door with a stack of library books about wolves and a list of questions written on a legal pad. She said if we were going to make this work, she needed to understand. So we talked. For hours. About pack dynamics, about the bond, about what it meant to be with someone who wasn't entirely human. His expression darkened. Damon found out a month later, called her a liability, said humans couldn't be trusted with our secrets. But you trusted her anyway. I loved her anyway. Kyle's amber eyes met hers in the darkness. And I'd do it again, even knowing how it ends, because those months with her were the first time in my life I felt like I could be both things, wolf and man, without having to choose. Alara's throat tightened. She understood that feeling, that desperate need to be seen in your entirety, rather than just the parts someone found convenient. I'm sorry Damon took that from you. He took it from both of us. Kale's jaw clenched. And from everyone else in the pack who might have found happiness outside our narrow definitions of acceptable. That's why I challenged him. Not just for Elena, but for all of them. They drove in silence for a while, the weight of shared grief settling between them. Alara found herself thinking about the last 3 months, about how she'd convinced herself that safety meant isolation, that healing required walls. But here she was, bleeding and hunted and more terrified than she'd ever been in her carefully controlled life. And somehow, impossibly, she felt more alive than she had in years. Kale, she said suddenly, what you said earlier, about smelling emotions. Can you tell what I'm feeling right now? He was quiet for a moment, his head tilted slightly as if listening to something beyond words. Fear, he said finally, but not of me, not anymore. You're afraid of what comes next, of making the wrong choice. He paused. But there's something else, something that smells like hope? No. Possibility. Possibility of what? His gaze was steady, intense. That maybe we're both exactly where we're supposed to be. Before Alara could respond, headlights flared in her rearview mirror. A truck, moving fast, gaining on them with predatory intent. Kale, I see them. His whole body had gone rigid, predatory. How fast can this car go? Alara pressed the accelerator, her heart hammering. We're about to find out. The truck surged closer, and through the rear window she could see shapes moving in the bed. 3, maybe 4 figures, their eyes reflecting gold in the darkness. The hunt had caught up to them, and this time, there was nowhere left to hide. Chapter 8. The Choice Between Worlds. The truck rammed into them from behind, and Alara's car fishtailed across the rain-slicked road. Hold on! She wrestled with the steering wheel, her pulse thundering in her ears. The car straightened just before it would have plunged into the ditch, tires screaming against asphalt. Behind them, the truck's engine roared, preparing for another strike. There's a turnoff ahead, Kale said, his voice preternaturally calm. 1/2 mile, old mining road that leads into the mountains. Take it. That'll trap us. Trust me. His hand covered hers on the wheel, warm and steady. I know these mountains. There's a place we can lose them. Alara nodded, her entire body vibrating with adrenaline. She pushed the accelerator harder, the speedometer climbing past 80 on a road meant for 50. The truck kept pace, its headlights filling her mirrors with blinding light. She could hear howls now, carried on the wind through her barely cracked window, victory cries that made her blood run cold. The turnoff appeared suddenly, almost hidden by overgrown brush. Alara cranked the wheel hard, tires squealing as they left the main road. The car bounced over potholes and debris, branches scraping against the sides. Behind them, the truck followed, but the narrower road forced it to slow. Keep going, Kale urged. Another mile. There's an abandoned mining camp. Buildings we can use for cover. And then what? We can't outrun them forever. You can barely walk? I know. His voice held a note of resignation that terrified her more than the howls. Ilara, when we stop, I need you to listen to me. Really listen. I don't like the sound of that. There's a way out of this. For you. He turned to face her fully, and in the dashboard's green glow, his eyes were luminous with barely suppressed emotion. When we reach the camp, you run. There's a hiking trail on the north side that leads back to the main road. You follow it, flag down a car, tell them you were hiking and got lost. Absolutely not. Ilara. I said no. Her voice came out fierce. We've been through this. I'm not leaving you. You don't understand what you're choosing. The words burst from him with desperate intensity. If you stay with me, there's no going back to your old life. Damon will mark you as an enemy. Every shifter in his territory, and his influence stretches across 3 states, will know your name, your face, your scent. You'll be hunted for the rest of your life. I know. No, you don't. He grabbed her arm, his fingers trembling. You'll never be safe in human society again. You can't go home, can't see your family, can't have the career you worked for, or the normal life you deserve. You'll be running, always running, looking over your shoulder, wondering if every stranger is a wolf in disguise. His voice cracked. I won't do that to you. I won't be the reason another person I care about loses everything. The words "person I care about" hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Ilara's hands tightened on the wheel. You think I don't know what I'm giving up? I've spent the last 2 hours doing the math, Kale. My apartment lease ends next month. I wasn't planning to renew anyway. My job? I quit 3 months ago. My family? She laughed bitterly. My mother calls once a week to ask when I'm going to get back out there, like Marcus was just a bad haircut I need to get over. My friends picked sides, and I wasn't the side they chose. That doesn't mean... What exactly am I going back to? She glanced at him, her eyes blazing. A life where I pretend to be okay? Where I smile through another family dinner while everyone tiptoes around my failure? Where I eventually meet someone new and spend every moment waiting for them to betray me too? She shook her head. At least with you, I know what I'm getting. Danger, sure, but also honesty, and someone who sees me as strong instead of broken. Kale stared at her like she'd just offered him salvation and damnation in the same breath. You're insane. You keep saying that, because you keep proving it. But there was something like wonder in his voice. Do you understand what you're saying? If you stay with me, if we make it to Alaska, you're choosing the shifter world. A world of violence and ancient laws and creatures that make those hunters look tame. I'm choosing you, Ilara corrected quietly. There's a difference. The mining camp appeared through the trees, a cluster of dilapidated buildings slowly being reclaimed by the forest. Ilara killed the headlights and pulled behind the largest structure, her heart pounding. The truck's engine growled somewhere behind them, searching. In the sudden silence, Kale reached out and cupped her face with his hand, his touch gentle despite the claws that had started to emerge at his fingertips. If you're sure, he said softly, if this is really what you want, then I need you to know something. What? The bond I had with Elena, it wasn't just love, it was a mate bond. In our world, it means... He struggled for words. It means your souls recognize each other. It's rare, powerful, and once it forms, breaking it would destroy both people involved. His amber eyes searched hers. I feel it with you. Have since the moment you pulled me from that trap. And I know, you feel it too. Ilara's breath caught. She thought about the inexplicable pull she'd felt toward the injured wolf, the way her heart had insisted she couldn't leave him even when logic screamed to run, the strange rightness of his presence in her cabin, in her car, in her life. A mate bond, she whispered. Yes. His thumb stroked her cheekbone. It means if you stay, we're bound. Forever. In ways humans don't have words for. Outside, gravel crunched. Voices called out in the darkness. Some human, Some decidedly not. The hunters had found them. Alara leaned forward until her forehead touched his. Then I guess we better make sure we both survive this. Kale's expression transformed. Grief and hope and fierce protectiveness all at once. Together? Together. He kissed her then, and it felt like a promise and a beginning, and the end of one life and the start of another, all compressed into a single desperate moment. Then the window shattered and the fight began. Chapter 9. The Alpha's judgment glass exploded inward as a clawed hand punched through the driver's side window. Alara screamed, jerking away as talons raked inches from her face. Kale moved with impossible speed despite his injuries, his body already shifting as he threw himself across her, taking the next strike across his back. Blood bloomed through his shirt, but he didn't stop. He grabbed the attacking wolf's arm and twisted, the sound of breaking bone sharp in the confined space. The wolf howled and retreated. Alara fumbled for the door handle and they tumbled out of the car just as more shapes surrounded them in the darkness. 5 wolves. No. 5 shifters in their half-forms, caught between human and beast, their bodies rippling with muscle and fur, eyes blazing gold in the moonlight. And standing at the center, fully human but radiating an authority that made the air feel heavy, was a man who could only be Damon. He was taller than Kale, broader, with the same dark hair but cold blue eyes that assessed Alara like she was prey. He was deciding whether to kill quickly or slowly. The family resemblance was unmistakable, and so was the cruelty that twisted his handsome features. "Little brother," Damon said, his voice cultured, almost gentle. "You've led us on quite the chase. I'm impressed you made it this far, considering the state you're in." His gaze slid to Alara. "And you brought a pet. How sentimental." "She's not part of this," Kyle growled, positioning himself between Alara and the circle of shifters. Blood dripped from his reopened wounds, but he stood firm, his partial shift making him look like something from a nightmare. "Let her go, Damon. Your fight is with me." "Oh, but she made herself part of this the moment she sheltered you, the moment she attacked my hunters." Damon took a step closer and the other shifters moved with him, like a coordinated unit. "You know pack law, Kyle. Any human who learns our secret and aids a rogue must be eliminated. It's for the protection of all shifters." "Your laws are poison," Kyle spat. "You use them to control, to punish anyone who threatens your power." "I use them to keep our people safe." Damon's voice hardened. "Something you forgot when you let your grief cloud your judgment. Elena was a mistake, a weakness, and you've repeated that mistake with this one." He gestured dismissively at Alara. "At least I can correct both errors tonight." Rage flooded through Alara, burning away her fear. "You killed her," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "You murdered an innocent woman because you were afraid of what it meant that your brother loved someone outside your control." Damon's eyes snapped to her, and the temperature seemed to drop. "The human speaks. How amusing." He moved closer, circling her like a predator. "Tell me, girl, did my brother explain what happens when shifters bond with humans? The complications? The children born unable to fully shift, trapped between worlds? The humans who go mad from sensing things their minds can't process?" "He told me enough," Alara said, lifting her chin. "He told me you're a tyrant who murders anyone who challenges you. I'm an alpha who protects his pack." Damon stopped directly in front of her, so close she could smell earth and pine and something wild. "And you, little human, are a threat. But I'm not without mercy." He glanced at Kale. "I'll give you a choice, brother. A final chance to prove your loyalty." Kale went very still. "What choice?" "Kill her yourself. Prove that you've learned your lesson, that you understand why attachments to humans are forbidden. Do this, and I'll welcome you back to the pack. Your exile ends tonight." Damon's smile was cruel. "Refuse, and I'll kill you both. Slowly, And I'll make sure you watch her die first. The words fell like stones into deep water, and the silence that followed felt suffocating. Ilara's heart hammered against her ribs as she looked at Kale, at the anguish written across his face. She thought about Elena, about the impossible choice Damon had given him before. End it or lose everything. History repeating itself. Do it, she said quietly. Kale's head whipped toward her. What? No. He's giving you a way out. Take it. Ilara forced herself to sound calm even as tears burned behind her eyes. You said Elena died because of you. Don't let me be another ghost you carry. Go back to your pack. Survive. Ilara, I mean it. She stepped toward him, ignoring Damon's amused expression. You don't owe me anything. We've known each other 3 days. That's not worth dying for. It's worth everything. Kale's voice was raw. His hands, still partially shifted, claws gleaming, came up to frame her face with devastating gentleness. Do you understand what you've done? You've shown me that love doesn't make us weak. It makes us brave enough to defy gods and monsters. Elena taught me that once, and I failed her. I won't fail you. Then you choose death, Damon said flatly. For both of you. A pity. You could have been great, Kale. Instead, you'll be a cautionary tale. He nodded to his hunters. Take them. Make it... No. The word came from behind Damon, and a figure stepped from the shadows. A woman with silver-streaked hair and eyes that held the weight of centuries. The other shifters immediately dropped their gazes in deference, and even Damon tensed. Mother, he said carefully, this doesn't concern the council. When an alpha condemns his own brother to death over a mate bond, it concerns us greatly. The woman's voice carried absolute authority. Stand down, Damon. All of you. Now. The hunters reluctantly shifted back to human form, backing away. Damon's jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. The woman, the council member, approached Kale and Ilara, her ancient eyes assessing them both. A true mate bond, she murmured. I can see it forming even now, the threads of fate weaving you together. She looked at Kale. Your father would be proud. He always believed bonds were sacred, regardless of species. Then you'll help us? Kale's voice held desperate hope. I'll do better than that. She turned to Damon, her expression hard. I'm calling a formal council review of your leadership. These laws you hide behind, they weren't meant to breed fear and control. And the death of the human girl, Elena, her eyes flashed. We will have answers. Damon's face went white with rage, but before he could respond, the woman gestured sharply. Go, both of you. You have until dawn to reach the northern border. After that, I can't protect you from pack justice. Kyle grabbed Ilara's hand, and they ran,